This is Jamie Drummond for Good Food Revolution. I'm joined all the way from Quebec today by none other than Pier-Alexis Soulie, who is not only one of the most talented sommeliers I know, but he has another string to his bow, which many of you may not be familiar with, and that is the speciality of artisanal maple syrup. Pierre, tell us a little bit more about your life and how it is entwined with the maple syrup production industry.
Well, you said it right, Mr. Drummond. Maple syrup is part of our DNA. I've been doing it for 5 generations in our village. I grew up in the world maple syrup capital. My in-laws been doing it as a rival family for 5 generations.
Well,
And the first conversation I ever had with my wife, future wife to become, was about the fact that since our grandfather stopped making maple syrup and her uncle started making it, the taste have changed, and it was nowhere near when the old Roger was making it. So she got mad at me, and then after that, she fell in love.
nice, nice, nice. And you say the heartland of maple syrup production. You were born in a place called Saint-Pierre-Baptiste, I believe.
Yeah, exactly. So there's like a track of 5 villages from east to west that runs through the Appalachian foothills. It's
Right.
fairly much the northern limit where hardwood start mixing with softwood. So it's probably the highest concentration of mature sugar maple in the world. And at the bottom of the slope, a little bit like in Burgundy, you have the bone of maple syrup where all the cooperative and transformer is. And I think they do transform anything between 65 and 70% of the worldwide maple syrup.
Now, please excuse my ignorance. Where is this exactly? I know it's somewhere between Quebec City and Montreal, but where is it exactly?
So if you take Highway 20 between Montreal and Quebec City, you'll hit multiple exit. One of them is Victoriaville, and one of them is Plessisville. And when you take one of those roads, it will lead you to Thetford Mines, which used to be the asbestos capital of the world. And on that old road, you'll start climbing up into the Appalachian, and that's exactly where most of the sugar bushes are, and the high quality traditional one are. There's other spot in Quebec. One of the traditional one is Beauce, but they don't have the same climatic condition. So they do produce a slightly rougher type of maple syrup, usually darker. There's a little bit less, there's less sugar maple, but they were making maple syrup way before us.
Nice, nice. Now, what for you makes for a fine artisanal maple syrup? What are the elements that make up one of the finer examples of maple syrup?
So the first thing is that you got to have good plant material, and you can't really plant that Acer saccharum, which is the Latin word for sugar maple. So you need to have those forests that have been selected by older generation. You need to have maturity into your trees as well. And you need to have a very long, cool season. And that's why being on the northern face of the Appalachian create an extended season for us. Then you need to harvest as soon as possible because this sap, which is actually maple water, will oxidize. So you try to harvest as soon as possible and treat it as soon as possible with heat of anything between 800 to 900 Celsius. So that's why we eat with wood. And then you need to heat that sap at a very low level in the pan so it doesn't caramelize and doesn't affect the original taste. It doesn't create too much Maillard reaction. And then you end up with high density, like pale maple syrup, and that's the finest. And the other thing which is very important is to consume maple syrup as fresh as possible.
Oh.
You know, if you speak to most of the habitants, you know what we call the abs, they will tell you that they don't eat maple syrup if it's not fresh from the day. A little bit like the cheese curds that we put on poutine, which is also a dish that was invented in my region. If the fresh cheddar is not like 6 hour to 12 hour fresh, we just don't eat it. We'll cook with it like we do with maple syrup, but it's like the first press of green olive oil, or like the pristine of fresh scallop or fresh oyster. The fresher they are, the best they are.
So with these finer examples of maple syrup, are they essentially terroir driven?
Well, I mean, I'm sure they are to a certain extent, but there was also like man influence,
I
So
agree with you. Yep.
I think right now with technology and with return on investment, because most of those guys are businesses more than artisanal
Yes.
local pride. The taste of the maple syrup, just like in wine, has changed so much, and a lot of people, they just don't remember how to make it the good old ways. Like you're talking about less than 2% of the maple syrup worldwide being produced like we do. And I think for us to defend that heritage and to work with technologies that were invented like almost 100 years ago, it's amazing to be able to prove that we don't need running water, we don't need electricity.
Wow.
We just need like dedication and knowledge, ancestral knowledge.
Now, I have never been to a cabin de sucre. It's an experience I really want to do at some point in the future, especially with my son. What can one expect if one was to visit your sugar shack?
Well, so I mean, it's first you need to dress accordingly,
Right.
and make sure that you have multiple like extra clothes, because it's usually very wet during the spring season. You got to get ready to work, because we're not there to entertain. We're there to get the job done.
I hear you.
And then you got to get ready to have a lot of fun and drink a little bit of gin and a little bit of beer if you're into that. And obviously some champagne, because we like to hide some bottle of champagne in the snow in the in the sugar bush. But like I think it's for us, it's really the rebirth of the nation. Like it's springtime. The birds are coming back. The sun is high. The energy is super high. Everything is melting. Everything's trying to bud, and it's the revival of a long, cold winter season. Now, if you go into a commercial sugar shack, well, you'll end up like eating in buffet, like pretty standard food, like a little bit cafeteria style. And the in between would be like going into automatized sugar shack, which most of the guys have, but you'll eat with the family, and it's a little closer to the real tradition, but with a little bit more comfort. Usually they have showers, and they have like electric oven, and but it's a lot of fun. Like you see the kids, it's I don't want to say it's freedom, but it's the first time of the year where you can like go out and sit in the sun and put the shades on and chill out. And most of the time people, they invite their family from the cities to cook some taffy over snow and have a big laugh. It's a big period for us before summer, where it's going to be hay and straw season, and it's a lot of work.
You mentioned taffy there, but what would the traditional cuisine be when you were staying at the sugar shack to work? What sort of things would you eat?
So for us, we only eat traditional food on Easter Day. The rest of the sugar season is just normal food, but it's heavily driven with pork, cheese, butter, country loaf. The traditional Easter Sunday would be to wake up before the sunrise, go to the spring and collect what we call Easter spring water, which is supposedly a holy water that you can keep all year long. If there's a birch close by, you will take a little bit of birch scalp, so it will bring you good fortune. And then after, you will have left the sweet beans into a sandstone jar into the boiler to cook overnight. And then you will just like reheat some country loaf over the cast iron oven, cook some bacon, some fresh egg from the day. Then you'll have some beans, and then usually some fresh cheese. cheddar. Sometimes you'll open beer fairly early, but that means that you're going to work all day. You're not going to be sitting just drinking beer. And yeah, and like it's just it's a family gathering. Like I think in Quebec less and less people are towards Catholicism, but they are towards tradition. And Easter is the big feast, the first big feast after Christmas or New Year's Eve.
Now, I keep on trying to draw correlations between wine and maple syrup. We spoke a little bit about terroir and man's influence. How does vintage change the maple syrup? Because I'm thinking about this winter, which has been quite odd. It's really warm here right now.
Well, like what we don't discuss when it comes down to vintage is in wine. I mean, they all say, oh, it was sunny, it was rainy, it was this and that. But what we are really interested into vintage in wine and in maple syrup is quantity. And because quantity translates into revenue. And good vintage, mostly in wine, are quantity vintage.
Yeah.
And most vintage that are good in maple syrup are quantity. So you just need not too much sun, a good cloud coverage. You need the night to be under 0 degrees Celsius and the day around 5 or 6, depending of your angle of your sugar shack. And that will ensure that it will slow down the maple tree, the maple sugar tree, to bud. Because as soon as it's going to start budding, as soon as it's going to start reviving, well, the sap will transform, the water that is clean and tasty will transform into sap, and then you'll end up with really, really bad taste. So realistically, like, you don't want those trees to see too much heat or to see too much light. So that way it will really stop or at least slow down their budding.
So how is 2023 vintage looking thus far?
Well, like we had a very, very mild winter so far. And as far as I'm concerned, I'm looking at the moon cycle, and we are looking at cold moon cycle at the moment. Mm-hmm. That means that I expect a very short sugar season. We had like a record one last year. We always like to say that 1 year out of 5 will be a bad year in our region, at least. I'm expecting a pretty short one, but again, you got to understand that some people already made some maple syrup. Like because there have been some cooler or milder weather. But those people relate on technology, like the most of those guys, they are producing maple syrup that they won't eat themselves. They'll just sell it on export market or sell it to the cooperative.
Now you produce, I believe, 2 different cuvées, Cuvée Roger and Cuvée Saint-Laurent. What is the difference between those two?
Yeah, so the Saint-Laurent is very easy. I mean, there's no electricity, there's no running water. It's a very old school way of doing maple syrup. It's all made by myself, and usually my mother gives a hand, and there's a horse involved, and that's
really?
it. Yeah. So the other one, Roger, is to honor my wife's grandfather. Mm-hmm. So it's a very, very interesting plot of land that they've been having for, I think, 3 generations in their family, and they have very high concentration of sugar maple, very mature sugar bush, and we select anything between 3 and 5% of the harvest. So I'll go like kind of every day tasting the maple syrup, and when the taste is to my liking, I'll tell them like put those lot on the side. Historically, it's mainly the maple syrup that we reserve for the family. We're just like trying to extend that tradition. The rest of the production will be sent to the cooperative and will be mixed and batched with other maple syrup and shipped on the export market.
Ah, I see. Right, that makes more sense now. I was wondering what went on there. So it's almost like that historical tradition of keeping back 5-10% just for the family, right?
Well, I mean, I'm going to be honest with you, Jamie. Everything that is made in agriculture, the first selection goes to the farmer,
Yeah, yeah.
and the rest goes to people in the city. So, you know, like it's the same thing for cattle industry. It's the same thing for anything, you know, like when you are like hands-on and there day in, day out, you will keep the best for yourself, you know, and it's the same thing for people that are growing fruits and vegetable. They will keep the best for them, you know, and then after they will sell the rest. It just depends how much you produce, you know, like out of, let's say, 100 barrel of maple syrup we produce, I'll keep 3 or 5, maybe 10 for myself, and the rest will go in export market. There's a lot of good maple syrup going in export market, but there's also like lesser quality that will be disclassified or used for industrial purpose to put it ice cream or in whatever. I mean, God knows what they do with it.
So if people were interested in seeking out some of your maple syrup, I've only tried the Cuvée Roger, and it was my son's favorite maple syrup ever. I think he kept it for about a year because it was only for special occasions. So that's sort of going against that that rule about having it as fresh as possible. Sorry about that. But where would people be going if they were interested in seeking out some of your maple syrup?
Yeah, so we have a website that works pretty well. Otherwise, we do distribute in Ontario through Grand Cru Deli, and we do distribute in Toronto, and we do distribute through somebody called Bushel and Peck in Niagara Peninsula.
Oh, yes, yes.
More and more people are reaching out to us to distribute. We just want to make sure that they can extend our values, and it's not always easy in retail. But realistically, I mean, the idea is to come to a certain point where we can have the maple syrup as accessible as possible without interfering with the quality. Because what you said is really meaningful to me. You know, like when your son say, "Oh, that's the best maple syrup he has," doesn't mean it's the best. It means it's closer to the real expression, and that's what we want to promote. You know, like I thought for many, many years that it was unacceptable that what was sold on grocery shelf was nothing close to what I grew up with. And I think that Canadians have the right to taste what farmers are eating, you know, like why would there be like a product for consumer and a product for producer? I mean, it's a question that we could do a podcast on, and I'm not sure that I will make any friends, but realistically, my small impact, because I'm very, very small producer in this big world of maple syrup, is to be able to offer a high quality, a quality that I would have no shame of serving on my table to people, and to tell the story as well, and to show our region to as many people as possible. Because at the end of the day, we believe in integrity, we believe in transparency, and we believe in truth. And we believe that everybody should have the right to know where what they are putting in their belly comes from.
Super, super. Thank you for giving me an insight, a 101 into the world of artisanal maple syrup production, because I honestly didn't have a clue about it. I appreciate your time today. Thank you very much, Pierre.
Thank you very much, Jimmy, and I hope you will be able to fold the gas tank and make it up north so I can show you a few tricks of the trade.
I would love to do that. I'd love to do that. We'll do a little on-site interview. Thank you very much. Bye for now.
100%, sir. Have a great day.